Hello, I'm Alma Angeles, and you're watching Eagle News International. Hello, CJ.
Hello, Alma, and good evening to everyone joining the broadcast. Here are the headlines.
The death toll from days of flooding and landslides in India and Nepal crossed 100 today, including several families swept away or crushed in their homes by avalanches of mud and rocks.
Japan's Mount Aso erupted today, spewing a giant column of ash thousands of meters into the sky as hikers rushed away from the popular tourist spot.
And Russia reported today a record 1,028 COVID deaths in a single day, with Russian President Vladimir Putin expected to introduce new nationwide restrictions in Europe's worst affected country.
COVID-19
And the IMF is downgrading economic growth in Asia due to COVID-19 and warning that U.S. financial tightening to combat inflation may negatively impact the region in the newly released Asia-Pacific Regional Economic Outlook.
will remain the most important feature of the ongoing recovery. Our
First in our news, the death toll from days of flooding and landslides in India and Nepal crossed 100 today, including several families swept away or crushed in their homes by avalanches of mud and rocks. Now, experts say that there were victims of ever more unpredictable and extreme weather across South Asia in recent years, caused by climate change and exacerbated by deforestation, damming, and excessive development. In Uttarakhand, in northern India, officials said 46 people had died in recent days, with 11 missing. At least 30 were killed in 7 separate incidents in Uttarakhand's Nainital region early Tuesday after cloudbursts. An ultra-intense deluge of rain triggered landslides and destroyed several structures. 5 of the dead were from a single family whose house was buried by a massive landslide, according to local official Pradeep Jain. Authorities ordered the closure of schools and banned all religious and tourist activities in the state. Uttarakhand reported 178.4 millimeters of rain in the first 18 days of October, almost 500% more than the average, according to the Hindustan Times, reporting and citing Indian Meteorological Department data. And the state's Mukteshwar area reported 340.8 millimeters of rainfall in the 24 hours until Tuesday morning, the most since the weather station was set up there in 1897.
Japan's Mount Aso erupted today, spewing a giant column of ash thousands of meters into the sky as hikers rushed away from the popular tourist spot. Now, no injuries were immediately reported after the late morning eruption in southwest Japan, which sent rocks flying in a dramatic blast captured by nearby CCTV cameras. People were warned not to approach the volcano as it ejected hot gas and ash as high as 3,500 meters or 11,500 feet and sent stones stumbling down its grassy slopes. Authorities said they were checking if any hikers had been trapped or injured. The last time JMA raised its warning for Aso to Wednesday's level, 3 out of 5, was when it erupted in 2016. The agency has been warning of increasing volcanic activity there in recent days, including a small eruption on Thursday. Mount Aso's huge caldera dominates the southwestern main island of Kyushu, where the 1,592-meter volcano is a popular tourist draw. Now, Japan is one of the world's most volcanically active countries. It sits on the so-called Pacific Ring of Fire, where a large portion or proportion of the planet's quakes and volcanic eruptions are recorded. In September 2014, Japan suffered its deadliest eruption in almost 90 years when Mount Ondake in central Nagano Prefecture burst unexpectedly to life, killing an estimated 63 people.
Meanwhile, a volcanic eruption on the Spanish island of La Palma, which has destroyed large swathes of land and buildings, marked its first month with no end in sight. Take a look. The volcano on one of the Canary Islands of Northwest Africa erupted on September 19, spewing out rivers of lava that have slowly crept towards the sea, covering large areas with ash. So far, no one has been killed by the continuous lava flows, but the molten rock has covered 763 hectares and destroyed 1,956 buildings, including hundreds of homes, according to the latest Spanish government figures. After a month of continual eruptions accompanied by minor earthquakes, geologists say they have no idea how much longer it will last. The volcano was putting out some 10,000 tons of sulfur dioxide emissions per day, and to start being considered extinct, it should emit 400 tons or less per day, according to David Calvo, an expert with the Involcan Volcanology Institute. The head of the regional government of the archipelago, Angel Victor Torres, said, "Nobody can say that this is nearing the end." About 7,700 people have been evacuated from their homes on the island, which has a population of around 85,000 people. Calvo said a new lava stream was about 30 meters or 100 feet from the island's western coast when its interaction with the seawater will send clouds of acidic, toxic gas into the air, which can be dangerous to inhale as it already did last month.
Floods have struck Al-Qana camp, a growing community of around 35,000 refugees in Sudan, as over 288,000 residents and refugees are impacted by heavy rains in the country. Neither Sudanese villagers nor refugees were prepared for the inundation, and many are now living on roadsides. Watch this.
كورة ولا ناس موية جار يا ناس قوموا فوق موية جار مشينا نينا الرجال جرينا على الموية عشان نشوف الموية ده ماشي كيف لقينا الموية دكتور عالي وصلنا البيوت ما قدرنا نلملم فيها حاجة يلا واحد يرفع جناه ويجري معه جينا وقفنا هنا في المدرسة عملوا ترتوارة بعد عملوا ترتوارة بعد يومين كسر الترتوارة قمنا من المدرسة هنا قمنا مشينا على الزلط
معسكر القناعة الحديثة غمرت تماما منذ يوم 7 يوم 8 في هذا الشهر، وأصبح اللاجئين بلا مأوى وموجودين على طرفي الشارع الرئيسي.
طريق الخاب اللي قاعدين فوقه زي دي يحلين المشاكلنا دي، لأن القوات بتاعنا أصلا في شارع سايد ما كويس. الشارع ده ما كويس شديد، والباغوضة والأكل لأنه الكل الأكل غرق جوا المويه، نحن قاعدين ناس بدون أكل وبدون نماميس، كل الأجهزة زي ده ما في شيء، والدواء.
Meanwhile, aid efforts have been scaled up to South Sudan, where unrelenting rains and flooding have affected 700,000 people, principally in 4 states. In an alert on Tuesday, UN Refugee Agency, or UNHCR, said that homes had been swept away and fields inundated, while families and livestock have been forced to seek safety on higher ground. Here's UNHCR Representative Arafat Jamal speaking from Juba.
We've seen houses submerged, people wading through water, and infrastructure damaged. The floods are a reality. This is the 21st century, and we have spoken to people who've said they have not seen flooding like this since 1962. Climate change does not have to lead to despair, because there are solutions. Solutions include pumping, they include canalization, and they include good planning. What we would like to do as an international community, and what we must do, is support the efforts of the people and the government of South Sudan to combat climate change and to see how to make the lives of people better and more hopeful.
The agency said in Upper Nile State alone, around 1,000 people walked for 7 days to reach Malakal town. Women, children, and elderly people arrived exhausted and hungry, and some had not eaten in days. UNHCR expressed concern for people who have been marooned on islands surrounded by water, sheltering under trees, and unable to cross swollen rivers to safety. The agency also noted that the flooding crisis will cause new vulnerability as an entire planting seasons are lost and herds of cattle are drowned.
South Korea has reiterated its commitment to helping the Philippines further enhance its preparedness for effective response to disasters. The Korean embassy in Manila said Korea and the Philippines have been working closely together to strengthen governance and infrastructure for disaster risk management at the local and central levels. Korea has also been working together with the Philippine government to enhance disaster preparedness for effective response to disasters. To attain this goal, Korea has contributed $410 million or approximately 20.79 billion pesos to date. The embassy said this contribution has so far helped build stronger resilience and risk mitigation mechanisms in local Philippine communities.
In other news, the United States vowed to do all in its power to free U.S. and Canadian missionaries taken hostage in Haiti after kidnappers demanded $1 million for each of the group of 17. A gang known as 400 Mawozo has been identified as behind the kidnapping of the group, and which includes 5 children on Saturday. Take a look.
We have, in the administration, been relentlessly focused on this, including sending a team to Haiti from the State Department, working very closely with the FBI, which is the lead in these kinds of matters, in constant communication with the Haitian National Police, the church that the missionaries belong to, as well as to the Haitian government. And we will do everything that we can to help resolve the situation.
Now, the missionaries work for U.S.-based Christian and ministries, or Christian aid ministries, which said that the group was abducted east of the capital, Port-au-Prince, while returning from visiting an orphanage between the city and the border with the Dominican Republic. Meanwhile, in Port-au-Prince, the spike in overall crime has spurred protest strikes. Streets are quiet and businesses, schools, and mass transit are closed. Cases of kidnappings have more than doubled in Haiti over the past year as gangs are growing increasingly numerous and powerful, leaving an already weak police force unable to cope.
Another shameful milestone has been reached in the conflict in Yemen, with 10,000 children killed or maimed since fighting started in 2015. That according to the United Nations Children's Fund, or UNICEF. In an appeal to all parties to the conflict to stop the violence, UNICEF maintained that Yemen is already the most dangerous place in the world to be a child, but now it is getting even worse.
Today, UNICEF has stated that we have surpassed 10,000 Yemeni children killed or injured. The question must be asked, do we need to continue to add children to this miserable list day after day, month after month, year after year? Yemen is the most difficult place in the world to be a child. Incredulously, it's getting worse. Yemen's humanitarian crisis, the world's worst, represents the tragic convergence of four main factors: a violent and protracted conflict, economic devastation, social services on the brink of collapse, that's health, nutrition, water, sanitation, education, protection, and a critically underfunded UN system. Now, at current funding levels and without an end to fighting, UNICEF simply cannot reach all these children. There's no way to say this simply. Without international support, more children, those who bear absolutely no responsibility for this conflict, will die.
The Yemeni civil war began in 2014 when Iran-backed Houthi rebels seized the capital Sana'a, prompting Saudi-led forces to intervene to prop up the government the following year. Then tens of thousands of people have died and millions more have been displaced.
Meanwhile, North Korea stoked new tensions yesterday after firing a ballistic missile into the Sea of Japan. The White House condemned the launch but said it remains prepared to engage with the DPRK. Take a look.
To them. As they've said, we condemn the DPRK's ballistic missile launch. These launches violate multiple UN Security Council resolutions and are a threat to the region. We call on the DPRK to refrain from further provocations and engage in sustained and substantive dialogue. And our commitment to the defense of the Republic of Korea and Japan remains ironclad. These launches also underscore the urgent need for dialogue and diplomacy. Our offer remains to meet anywhere, anytime, without preconditions.
State media reported that indeed North Korea successfully tested a new type of submarine-launched ballistic missile as the nuclear-armed country seeks to show off its ever-expanding military capabilities. A proven submarine-based missile capability would take the North's arsenal to a new level, allowing deployment far beyond the Korean peninsula and a second strike capability in the event of an attack on its military bases.
FBI agents conducted raids on Tuesday at luxury properties in Washington and New York linked to Russian oligarch Oleg Deripaska, a close ally of Russian President or Russian leader Vladimir Putin. The New York Times reported that the FBI had also raided a home in New York's Greenwich Village that is linked to Deripaska, a billionaire metals tycoon. The newspaper said the raids were carried out as part of an investigation into whether Deripaska had violated sanctions imposed on him by the United States in 2018. Announcing the sanctions, the Treasury Department said Deripaska is being investigated for money laundering, extortion, and racketeering. He's under sanctions over Moscow's meddling in the 2016 U.S. elections.
And the news continues here on Eagle News. CJ and I will be back right after this.
This portion is brought to you by North Luzon Express Terminal.
Araw-araw sa panahon ngayon, may daming tanong kailangan ng tugon. Nandito si Ali at si Papi na rin, ang smart at pretty nanay. Ang sigla pag nagkwentuhan, ang sigaw ng Pinoy Nation. Information, education, ating salong
sa palagay nyo? Lunes hanggang Biyernes, alas 8 hanggang alas 10 ng umaga. Mapapanood sa Net25 TV, Facebook page and YouTube channel. Mapapakinggan din sa DZEC 1062 at Eagle FM 95.5.
Welcome back. Back here in the country, the Department of Health, or DOH, today reported 3,656 new COVID cases, the country's lowest daily tally in over 3 months. The new infections brought the total number of active cases nationwide to 67,061, according to the DOH latest case bulletin. About 77.9% of these active cases are mild, 6.8% are asymptomatic, 2% are critical, 4.6% are severe, and 8.69% are moderate. The DOH also said 228 more patients recovered from the disease, bringing the total recoveries to 2,627,331. It said recoveries account for 96.1% of the total case count, which has reached 2,735,369 since the start of the pandemic last year. The DOH also logged 5 new deaths, bringing the total death toll to 40,977.
President Rodrigo Duterte said the government will expand its pediatric COVID-19 inoculations to 13 more hospitals in Metro Manila. In his talk to the people, Duterte said there are presently 8 participating hospitals for the pilot run of the COVID-19 pediatric vaccination in the National Capital Region. These include the Philippine Children's Medical Center, the National Children's Hospital, Philippine Heart Center, Pasig City Children's Hospital, Del Mundo Medical Center, Philippine General Hospital, St. Luke's Hospital in Global City, and the Makati Medical Center.
Currently, I am happy to report that on the first day of inoculation of the minors, last October 15, more than 1,100 minors with comorbidities have been given their first dose of vaccine against COVID-19. Also, we will expand the vaccination of this adolescent age group of 12 to 17 by adding 13 more hospitals in the NCR. Currently, we have an initial 8 participating hospitals, and we hope to expand this number ng mga hospital, and we also will welcome the arrival of additional vaccines in the coming days.
Meanwhile, Dr. Kezia Rosario of the National Vaccine Operations Center said that at least 23 hospitals and vaccination sites are being prepared by the LGUs, or local government units, of the National Capital Region once the second phase of vaccination for teenagers aged 12 to 17 with comorbidities, which will begin on Friday. Let's listen in.
Currently, ma'am, sa ating census na mag-out for phase 2, may 23 hospitals na tayo, including po yung mag-continue na phase 1 hospitals. No? So each of the local government units naman po ng National Capital Regions have already prepared na ng kanilang vaccination site using yung hospital as a vaccination site. We had several din na mga LGUs due to limitations ng spaces ng hospital have negotiated with us to use several of their nearby facilities na sa vaccination site. But then, ito medyo assess ng vaccination site to ensure na we can still give the quality service ng pagbabakuna, no? Is the initial rollout pa ito, phase in case may mangyari, we can respond accordingly, no? And ma-ensure ng ating mga facilities, yung referral hospitals na handa din siya. So, may several LGUs tayo, ma'am, na hindi hospital, but then most are hospital.
So far, 4 kids had experienced adverse reactions to vaccines, which are now being investigated by the National Adverse Events Following Immunization Committee. Children with any of these comorbidities are eligible for vaccination. Medical complexity or those with long-term dependence on technical support, genetic conditions, neurologic conditions, metabolic or endocrine diseases, cardiovascular diseases, obesity, HIV infection, tuberculosis, chronic respiratory diseases, renal disorders, hepatobiliary diseases, and those who are immunocompromised due to disease or treatment.
Russia reported a record 1,028 COVID deaths in a single day, with President Vladimir Putin expected to introduce new nationwide restrictions in Europe's worst affected country. The new figures bring Russia's official death toll to 226,353, the highest on the continent, even as authorities have been accused of vastly downplaying the severity of the pandemic. The Russian leader is expected later on Wednesday to rule on a government proposal to introduce a nationwide week-long holiday at the end of the month to curb the spread of the virus. Under the plan, Russians will not go to work the first week of November, which coincides with national school holidays. Putin has introduced paid holidays during coronavirus peaks before, most recently in May. On Tuesday, Moscow Mayor Sergei Sobyanin ordered the capital's first coronavirus restrictions since the summer. He told unvaccinated over 60s in Moscow to work from home and extended mandatory vaccinations for service workers. Those restrictions take effect next Monday and are set to last until the end of February. Now, Sobyanin also told employers to move 30% of their staff to home working. The surge in cases has come without any strict restrictions in place to limit COVID-19 spread, and as authorities struggle to contain or to counter widespread anti-vaccine sentiment.
Meanwhile, the UK government is under spotlight again as COVID cases rise again. For 2 weeks, the number of new cases in Britain has wavered between 35,000 and 40,000 a day. Here's Patricia Rodriguez for the report.
Britain has repeatedly trumpeted its mass vaccination program against COVID-19, hailing its early approval of jabs as a key part of the long struggle to return to normal life. But infection rates remain stubbornly high, contrasting sharply with its European neighbors, prompting fresh questions of the government. For 2 weeks, the number of new cases has wavered between 35,000 and 40,000 a day, and on Monday nudged closer to 50,000, the highest since the July peak of the Delta variant outbreak. The daily death toll has often exceeded 100 since the summer. Scientists have already voiced fears that a high underlying number of cases could overload the state-run National Health Service, which is often under pressure in autumn and winter from respiratory infections. Simon Clark, Associate Professor in Cellular Microbiology at the University of Reading, said that the rate of infections among older school-age children is clearly the driving force behind this sustained tide of new infections. While healthy children are generally able to fight off the disease, the rise in case numbers may be of concern to parents, grandparents with caring responsibilities, and teachers, some of whom may not be vaccinated or have health conditions that make them vulnerable, said Clark. Britain removed COVID restrictions in July, ending social distancing and mask mandates, although many transport operators still require them. Proof of vaccine for visiting crowded spaces such as restaurants, theaters, and nightclubs is also not mandatory in England and has also just been introduced in Wales and Scotland, which set their own health policy. Britain has mainly used the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine, which was shown to be less effective at preventing infection from the Delta variant than mRNA vaccines such as Pfizer, BioNTech, and Moderna, predominantly used in Europe. Johnson, who wants to get the country's economy moving again, is reluctant to reimpose restrictions, including lockdowns. Reporting from London, United Kingdom, I'm Patricia Rodriguez. We live in interesting times.
Thank you, Patricia. A U.S. Supreme Court justice on Tuesday rejected a request by healthcare workers in Maine to block a statewide vaccine mandate while their wider legal challenge against the measure proceeds. All healthcare workers in the state will have to be fully vaccinated under the mandate, which comes into force on October 29. Several unnamed health workers and one health provider insist the decree violates their constitutional right to freedom of religion, citing consensus objections to the vaccine. They brought the case against Maine Governor Janet Mills and other officials and have asked the court to put a preliminary block on the mandate while their case is heard. On Tuesday, Justice Stephen Breyer, who responds to emergency applications from Maine, denied their petition for a preliminary injunction, which had already been rejected by a district court.
Back in the United Kingdom, healthcare leaders are urging the British government today to reinstate some coronavirus restrictions to ease pressures on hospitals because of spiraling case numbers. But ministers remain opposed to reintroducing any curbs, arguing the situation is still far better than earlier this year, and the country is learning to live with the virus. A total of 223 deaths from COVID-19 were registered on Tuesday, the highest 24-hour toll since March, while there's mounting concern at daily case rates. The country is averaging more than 40,000 new cases a day for the first time since the summer, and the number of patients admitted to hospital is increasing. Matthew Taylor, head of the NHS Confederation representing the state-run health service in England, Wales, and Northern Ireland, said hospitals were feeling severe pressure and action was needed as the busier winter period approaches.
A Brazilian Senate committee will on Wednesday ask that President Jair Bolsonaro be charged with intentional crimes over his management of the COVID-19 pandemic, which has left 600,000 of his compatriots dead. Following 6 months of eventful hearings with emotional witness statements and chilling revelations about the use of ineffective medication on human guinea pigs, the Committee of Inquiry will deliver its eagerly awaited report. Renan Calheiros, the centrist senator who is the lead author of the 1,200-page report, has already revealed that he has retained at least 9 charges against the far-right president, including quackery and crimes against humanity. But he announced a last-minute withdrawal of homicide and genocide charges after some infighting within the panel. They said hundreds and thousands died in his bid for herd immunity. The news continues after this short break. Please don't go away.
Mula noon hanggang ngayon, gabay natin ang MTRCB ratings sa matalino at responsableng panonood. Sa tamang pagsunod sa MTRCB ratings, ginagawa nating ligtas at makabuluhan ang panonood ng bawat miyembro ng pamilyang Pilipino. Lumipas man ang panahon, hanggang may pamilyang Pilipino, andyan ang MTRCB.
Events happen around us all the time, in our community, in our country, around the world. Events that affect people move communities, or simply inspire us. Interesting events that people need to know. In these interesting times, we continue to be a competent partner in delivering news about these events. Fast, accurate, balanced. Eagle News, because we live in interesting times.
Isa ang mga kooperatiba sa mga naapektuhan ng COVID-19 crisis. Sa isang survey ng Cooperative Development Authority, nangangamba ang mga kooperatiba sa pagbaba ng kanilang kita dahil sa mahirap na transportasyon at komunikasyon. And one of the most important questions is, how can they transition to digitalization? In this episode, we will discuss the journey of one cooperative that remained resilient during the pandemic. Ms. Faye Visa, General Manager of the Pantukan Chess Club Multipurpose Cooperative, and Mr. Bradley Pineda of Globe Business will share their insights.
When the pandemic has opened our eyes to the many possibilities that we can do with the power of the digital,
Globe Business vision to equip cooperatives with digital solutions so that they can become a kooperatibang matatag.
All these in this episode of Open for Business.
Welcome back. The IMF is downgrading economic growth in Asia due to COVID-19 and warning that U.S. financial tightening to combat inflation may negatively impact the region in the newly released Asia-Pacific Regional Economic Outlook released today. The IMF said that it expects Asia economy to grow by 6.5% in this year, compared with its April forecast for a 7.6% expansion. Let's listen in.
COVID-19 pandemic is expected to leave medium-term scars to Asian economies. Divergence in economic prospect across countries, sectors, income, and skill levels in age and gender will remain the most important feature of the ongoing recovery. Output levels of the developing countries compared with the advanced countries are expected to remain below pre-pandemic trends in the coming years, reflecting differences in policy support and vaccine rollouts. The main risk is related to evolving pandemic dynamics. For example, the possibility of a COVID becoming an endemic and the low vaccine efficiency against new variants. Rising inflation is also posing uncertainties as higher commodity prices, supply chain bottlenecks, and rising shipping costs continue to pull inflation pressures. It is also encourages risk of financial spillovers from U.S. monetary policy normalization, as U.S. Fed is more likely to start normalization earlier if inflation pressures increase further in the United States. The increase in inflation in Asia, however, has been more subdued than in other regions so far, but the risk is rising. What we are worrying about is that, after the global financial crisis, Asia also rely on large stimulus packages. And then after the COVID, given relatively limited policy space, many Asian countries actually increase the leverages. So if you look at the leverage ratio in Asia overall, it's quite higher than before. So the higher interest rate in the United States can cause a capital outflow from the region, that can cause a depreciation, that can cause a domestic financing market cost increase.
And answering questions about the Philippines, Chang Yong-ri, Director of Asia Pacific Department of IMF, said there is a chance for the country's economy to bounce back if the rollout of vaccines can be sped up. Take a look.
Ask about, unless you have a higher number of the people vaccinated, you cannot forever to maintain the containment policy because the economic impact will be very serious. So I really hope that the Philippine government accelerate the vaccination of the people. And with that, I hope that they can go back to the previous economic trend, such as 6 to 7% growth rate based on their build infrastructure investment plan.
Given these challenges, the IMF official said the first priority is to address the health crisis, noting that swift and broad vaccinations and equitable sharing of vaccines globally are critical.
Staying in the country, the Department of Energy is asking Congress to provide the government a power to intervene and address sudden and prolonged oil price increases by amending the oil deregulation law. Now, Energy Secretary Alfonso Cusi sent a letter on October 18 to the chairman of the Senate and House Committee on Energy, Sherwin Gatchalian, and Juan Miguel Arroyo, respectively, as the country faces a prolonged oil spike due to the continuing increase in the world market price. Cusi also cited several reasons for the prolonged oil price spike, noting the sudden global increase in demand and an unanticipated lack of supply. According to Cusi, the oil demand is now estimated at 103.22 million barrels a day as of October 16, against a supply of 100.32 million barrels per day. He also said the surge of economic activities due to the containment of COVID-19 was the result of measures adopted and implemented worldwide, including mass vaccination, control of the Delta and other variants, Europe's no lockdown policies, and China's economic boost. This led to a sudden demand in energy utilization, including the demand for oil in the transportation sector like gasoline and diesel. Also, the DOE secretary said the stocking of petroleum products inventories as winter approaches to cover demand from October this year to March of next year, with stocking expected until February 2021.
Britain's competition watchdog said Wednesday it had fined Facebook more than £50 million for failing to supply information linked to its takeover of Giphy. The Competition and Markets Authority said the fine, totaling £50.5 million, or about $69.5 million, was imposed for consciously refusing to report all the required information concerning the takeover of the animated graphic startup it bought last year. Under the Initial Enforcement Order, or IEO, Facebook is also expected to provide the regulator with regular updates demonstrating its compliance. The authority said that Facebook significantly limited the scope of updates required by the CMA, despite repeated warnings. Giphy's user-uploaded library of animated images is already integrated and used widely by Facebook's family of social media apps, but can also be used on other platforms such as Twitter.
What does it feel like to hover over 1,000 feet in the air? A new tourist attraction opening in New York this week tries to answer that question. Air, an art installation by artist Kenzo Digital, opens Thursday inside the recently completed One Vanderbilt Tower, now the Big Apple's fourth highest tower. Take a look.
Observation deck is by far my most favorite. It's very modern, give the 360-degree view, and especially the views of Empire State. It's just stunning. The way it is created, giving an infinity room coverage is just mind-blowing. I think I haven't seen anything like this in New York City.
Amazing.
Gorgeous. And that's it for tonight's broadcast. Well, thank you so much for joining us. The news continues tomorrow. I'm CJ Hero.
And at the end of the day, there remains so much more to be grateful for. We'll see you back tomorrow. I'm Alma Angeles, and
we live
in interesting times.